Yo, what else up? Welcome back to Reviews with Jake, where I just got done watching The Babysitter, Killer Queen on Netflix. Jesus, that's a mouthful. The Babysitter, Killer Queen picks up 2 years after the first film, in which we have Cole, who is still dealing with the trauma after B tried to murder him. Melanie tries to pick up his spirits by taking him on a trip away from home, where another bloodbath of a night ensues. What, you thought we were done with Netflix reviews just because movie theaters are reopening? Come on. It's actually really interesting that this particular movie comes out in 2020 because prior to this year, I only touched and reviewed 2 Netflix originals. And wouldn't you know it, that The Babysitter was one of them. And I actually really enjoyed that film. Granted, I probably was a little too generous with the B+ that I gave it, but that wasn't too far off. The bottom line is I was genuinely surprised when I first stumbled across that movie in 2017. But then they go and release its sequel seemingly out of nowhere, and I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I personally wasn't really pounding the table for a sequel here. I mean, no, the first movie didn't end with the perfect bow tie. There were some unanswered questions, but none that I was demanding answers for. But nevertheless, here we are. So what do they have for us? Pros start with this film's style. It has a lot of it, similar high caliber stuff to the first film. I feel like that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World approach of overlay text, graphics, cartoons, animation built over top, I feel like that's gotten really popular in the last couple years. However, I think The Babysitter and The Babysitter sequel, right here, I think these are like the top shelf examples of how that's done. This doesn't shock me personally because the director comes from a music video background, so clearly he has the capability of thinking outside the box visually. Some examples are really in your face, obvious, front and center, while other ones are just a little bit more subtle and kind of in the backdrop. Like earlier on in the film, where you have exchanges between Melanie and Cole, they're in the middle of a big crowd of people and they're talking in normal speed, just having a conversation, while everyone around them is in slow-mo. They never really explain it, acknowledge it, or really let it kind of distract from the conversation happening. It's just one of those things that you just kind of not only just learn to just kind of go with as it's happening, but really just enjoy what's happening visually. Both films in this franchise so far just have a lot of energy to them. They just ooze style visually. Another thing that these movies ooze is blood. Lots of it. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of gore in these movies, and they're very enjoyable in that regard. Before you go and stab a red flag on my back, this isn't like torture porn violence. This isn't Saw or Hostel. This is like intentionally cartoonish, over-the-top violence that's impossible to take seriously. They're just so far past the realm of possibility that you just can't help but laugh and enjoy the creativity behind some of these kills. And the awesome cherry on top is these reactionary shots they cut to when someone gets killed brutally, and all of a sudden it just looks like these people get like a pail of blood splashed on their face like f***ing Carrie. At no point does this movie ask you to take it seriously. It's ridiculous. It knows it's ridiculous. It doesn't hide from it. It leans into the skid. It just wants you to kick back and enjoy the ride. And you gotta love movies like that when they come around. At least to a certain degree, which does bring me right into the cons because this movie is unnecessarily convoluted. It's a little bit more complex than a movie that I kind of intended to just shut my brain off and enjoy. The first film was just so beautiful in its simplicity. You have a kid who has a crush on his babysitter, the babysitter tries to sacrifice him to the devil. I mean, hey, we've all been there, right? But this movie just gets bogged down in so many subplots that all combine into one overarching plot that just didn't have the payout to justify itself. Stemming off of everything that happens in this plot during this 90-minute runtime, I also wasn't really a fan of all the things that allegedly happened during the 2-year gap between movies. I always say this because Judah Lewis, the kid who plays Cole, that kid got hit by puberty like a freight train. I had to straight up Google it, and I guess it's possible. The last film was in 2017, 3 years ago. Not 2, but 3. And the kid's only 19, so I guess it's within the realm of possibility, but still. Same goes with Emily Allen. I think her middle name is Lind, who plays Melanie. I mean, she really grew up too. I mean, both of these people, you could tell me that 5 years had passed and I would have believed it. I only really emphasize this because where we were left off in the first film at the end of that one, and where we pick up in this one, that 2 years, a lot happened that just kind of surprised me, that I just find it hard to believe that all of this kind of happened within 2 years. Things are drastically different. It almost feels like one of those really long delayed sequels, like Bill and Ted a few weeks ago. I mean, it feels like that much has changed, but this isn't a lifetime's worth between movies. This is 2 years. It just makes the relationship between the first film and the second film just feel disconnected, disjointed. They don't belong together. Maybe I'd be more willing to overlook that difference if they kind of took the direction in the second one to a more gratifying place, but it was just very unfulfilling, so that disconnect is even more emphasized. Another aspect that this movie was not very gratifying in comparison to the first one was the humor. This movie just was not as funny as the first one. I think for me personally, the big reason for that is an over-reliance on contemporary humor. Jokes that only really land and are relevant today, and I'm personally not a fan of that kind of humor. I didn't feel like the first film really leaned on that kind of stuff, but in this one you got adults joking about Fortnite? I mean, that's not gonna age well. I mean, maybe that's just my wishful thinking that people would stop playing that game and doing those stupid dances, but it's just not funny when you kind of make jokes that really date itself. It's low-hanging fruit. I mean, in all the 10-year run of Iron Man in the MCU, all the countless jokes that he said, easily my least favorite one was in the first Iron Man film in 2008. Iron Man's in the convoy with one of the soldiers and they take a selfie and he's like, yo, I better not see this on your MySpace page. A MySpace joke in 2008? I mean, that joke probably expired in 2009. Another thing was that this movie was just way too random and sporadic. It had a serious case of ADD. Don't get me wrong, the first film was too, to a degree, but this movie just took it to a whole new level. The first one had some balance. This one was just balls to the walls. It would be like a regular standard scene, then it would cut to like a flashback for 30 seconds, then it would cut back to the scene, then all of a sudden it would break out into like a musical dance number where everyone's dancing to disco music and wearing 70s clothing, then it goes back to normal, then all of a sudden everyone explodes into puddles of blood within like 2 frickin' minutes. It was all over the damn place. I feel like the writers were doing blow in the back office when they wrote it, just wired as They handled this aspect so much better in the first one. In fact, that's this movie in a nutshell. Damn near everything that is wrong with this movie I felt was done better in the first film. I feel like they were just trying to recapture that lightning in the bottle and it just fell short. Which is kind of a bummer when you look at the full overarching story now of the two films. The first film stood fine on its own and this one kind of came and ruined it. It's like someone who tells a killer joke at a party, everyone laughs, and then he tries to feed off that momentum and tries to tell similar jokes but they aren't quite as funny. Then everyone in the party's just like, yeah, probably should quit while you're ahead. I'm going to give The Babysitter Killer Queen a C. But that's just me. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. New reviews coming real soon. Stay safe and thanks for checking in.